Such is the enormous power of youth, where you can juxtaposition two completely contrary things at a single point of time. Youth, as of today, form a predominant composition of the world's population. When it comes to two specific parts of the world, which is India and Africa, the entire African continent and the Indian subcontinent, as of now, host more than 45% of world's youth population. And India and Africa by themselves have around 60% of their population from youth. Now, energy for quite a long time has been an issue, and energy access has been a major issue across the globe, where until very recently, more than 200 million people across the globe don't have access to electricity, and more than 1.2 billion don't have access to reliable electricity. Now, how can youth, who form a predominantly larger chunk of this population mix, can help address the problem of energy access, energy transition, and unite to fight against this climate change, is something that remains to be answered. To answer all of these questions, 2 years back, exactly this month, five of us came together to start India Africa Youth Energy Forum. India, as a subcontinent, is well poised to lead the globe in the energy revolution. Africa, as a continent, is now achieving many strides to make its mark in energy transition. All five of us were committed in our resolve to ensure that we not only have government to government or intergovernmental connection, but there is more or intensified people to people connect, especially youth to youth connect. Through India Africa Youth Energy Forum, this platform, we wanted to establish a connection between young aspiring entrepreneurs, researchers, scientists, and even policymakers to continue and to actually initiate a discourse, to conduct capacity building activities, and over and above, to exchange or to facilitate exchange of like-minded people to come and look at the scenario on the ground in their countries. So today, as a mark of the fourth episode of Parichaya with Pulipaka, I have four of my fellow co-founders of India Africa Youth Energy Forum, with whom I would like to have a casual discussion about various things, starting from the Sustainable Development Goals, how India is poised, what should be the strategies between India and Africa, and finally, what is their vision for the India Africa Youth Energy Forum in the coming years. So without much ado, I would like to now welcome one by one all of my fellow speakers and guests today. First and foremost, with me I have Mr. Utsav Mule. Utsav is an alum of the Fletcher School from USA, and he comes with a very rich background in both sustainability as well as environmental engineering. He has done his engineering from Kurukshetra, NIT Kurukshetra, and he has completed his masters from Fletcher. And he's now working with a sustainable development company in Kenya. Utsav, very welcome to Parichaya with Pulipaka.
Hi, thank you very much, Subbu, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you very much.
Discussing.
My second guest today is another young energy warrior who is contributing his might to both India's energy transition journey as well as making his mark for changing the life of youth in Africa. He is Mr. Prasidh Kumar. He is now currently serving as the director of Solar Energy Society of India, which is one of the oldest and largest umbrella organization for researchers pertaining to solar energy in India, and has also been an affiliate entity for International Solar Energy Society. Prasidh, welcome to Parichaya with Pulipaka.
Thanks a lot, Shubhu, for your warm introduction.
Thank you. And now my third guest is again another energy warrior who is not only making his mark today in the energy transition sector, but is also fighting his fight to bring accountability in the way we use energy, the way we audit the energy, and the way we position ourselves in energy transition. He also comes with a very rich experience with on-ground implementation of different projects in Africa. And he is none other than Mr. Ninad Pathak. Ninad, welcome to Parichaya with Pulipaka.
Hi, Subbu. Thank you for introducing me. I am glad to be here today.
Thank you very much. Now we have our final guest. He is a young leader who has established himself and is leading one of the largest logistics company in terms of its relations and in its activities with India and Africa. So his firm acts as a bridge between connecting people, connecting goods, and connecting services between the Indian subcontinent and African continent. He is Mr. Siva Kalyan, who is joining us in this episode all the way from Kigali in Rwanda.
Hi,
Kalyan,
Subbu.
welcome.
Thank you for your introduction. Let me expand my warm wishes to everyone. It's a pleasure to be
Thank you.
here with you. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very happy. So the first time all of us are together after quite a long time, and though it is not a physical meeting, I think at least this will compensate to a large extent. Now I would like to begin with Utsav. Utsav, you've been on the ground for almost last 3-4 years, and you've seen Africa very closely, especially the East Africa part. So what do you think is the African connection to the Sustainable Development Goals, and how should the energy transition in Africa should be strategized and should be executed?
It's a very, very big question. Yes, as you have rightly said, I've been able to have experience in the last 2-3 years in Rwanda and Tanzania. While my focus has been climate change and energy, I'm working right now as a sustainability and strategy consultant for many private sector companies in Kenya. So, in terms of sustainability, I would say African nations were already ahead simply because a lot of the energy development happened quite late in terms of energy access. The population base is also small, population density is also lower, so energy demand is also lower. So, for example, for Kenya, a large percentage, over 80, is of the energy mixes from renewable sources. So that makes it simpler to go after the sustainable development goals. However, of course, there are 17 SDGs, and the first one is no poverty. And the whole spirit behind the SDGs is to leave no one behind and ensure that there is inclusive, equitable growth. For that, I think a lot of things are happening on the ground in Kenya. The government and private sector are doing a lot of things. However, in a country of 50 million people, where 70% is below the age of 30, 35, unemployment is definitely a big, big problem. So to take care and take advantage of the demographic dividend of this youth, we need to continue to engage young people into this things.
I agree. I definitely agree with you that they have always been ahead of us in the sustainability curve, and we need to actually pay attention to the way things evolve in terms of employment and in terms of their journey in energy transition. Now, you are now in Nairobi, and we have Kalyan sitting in Rwanda, in Kigali. And Kalyan, you have been working closely with a plethora of businesses in Rwanda, in East Africa, especially Uganda and Kenya. And you facilitate a lot of industrial activity between their Indian counterparts. So where do you see, or how do you see India working closely with Africa on the energy domain in the industry to industry level?
Yes, that's a good one. Actually, Exim Bank is there, right, from India. It is already contributing its parts through the hydropower plant in Rwanda in around 2015. And there are a lot of power plants here. And I think there is a scope for energy sector. I mean, in compared to solar. When it comes to solar, when there are a lot of fourth generation farmers, third generation farmers coming from US and a lot of countries to Rwanda to do agriculture business here, and they are considering in solar power instead of using direct power supply. They are going for solar pumps, solar drip systems, lot of things. So I think we can collaborate with Exim Bank or some other banks, and we can do a lot of solar projects in Rwanda. Yes.
No, that's
At the same time, youth, there are a lot of youth who are educated and having a basic language skills. So which we can share the knowledge and train them in the energy sector.
Yes, I agree. Because when I was in Rwanda, I've seen very closely how we can actually create an impact let's say through the capacity building programs and all. Now coming back to since you have mentioned about capacity building, I would like to ask Prasid, because he's closely working. He has been having a good experience on the capacity building initiatives. He has been leading some of those initiatives for various organizations, including our India Africa Youth Energy Forum. So, where do you see what is the missing thing in this capacity building loop? Because we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of very rich experience. Like Kalyan said, there are a lot of industries that are willing to go, but unless you nurture the local talent, there will be nothing that will productively come out of it.
See, two things I want to emphasize in this thing. This is actually a very good question that you have asked. Two major things I want to emphasize in the aspect of this answer. One is the research part, in which the capacity building plays a major role. Second is the industry connect. So if the industry connect is not there, capacity building doesn't make any sense. You are training students, you are training engineers, you are training scientists. Where will they go at the end? So at the end, we have to give them an industry connect. So that industry connect, this platform, India Africa Youth Energy platform, is providing to the students whom we are training or wherever we are carrying the capacity building programs.
Yes.
Second point which I'm emphasizing on is the research part. Nowadays, developing countries are lacking the research funding. If you can see, China, if we can take it as exception, and European countries having a very good research funding with them. But developing countries, including India and African countries, are lacking this research funding with them. So this training doesn't make any sense if they are not doing any innovative work or any research work they are not taking up. So these two things, I think, will include this capacity building part.
No, I very much agree, and I think it very much makes a lot of sense. And I can happily go on with my next question, linking your points to Ninad, because Ninad has a very good experience on ground dealing energy projects, especially in a terrain like West Africa, in countries like Senegal and all. So Ninad, how do you look at it when we see that, on one hand, these two things are juxtaposition. On one hand, there is no energy access. On second hand, you have a lot of youth in the population who have enormous potential but are deprived of opportunities. So how can we find this perfect spot, both from your experience and some of your insights?
Right. So I did a couple of projects in Senegal in Sendou region where we had where we provided solar-based electricity for about 7 villages. And one of the critical aspects while dealing in that project was actually utilizing the youth over there who actually stayed in one of those two houses to make sure that they are trained, they understand what their duties are, and the local government actually. So technically, the payment method was like we were supposed to install the system, we were supposed to provide them the energy connect, and the government was supposed to take the charge of maintenance and everything. We were supposed to train the youth and make sure that they understand what is to be done. So during our course over there, we understood that this is a good model for most of the villages. And a lot of these villages, a lot of these small sectors where, as you mentioned, that about 70% of Africans do not have energy connect. They lack system, they lack infrastructure, and critically, countries that are not centrally distributed, which was in my experience what happened in Senegal, that Dakar was the capital, everything was located around capital, and the villages that were closer to the capital had the access to energy, say at least for 6 hours, 8 hours a day. But a region like Sendou, which lies extremely south, it's even below Gambia, and like Gambia kind of divides Senegal into north and south. So such places were completely remote. There were not enough, work done by the government to make sure that these people get the energy. I think it was they had some elections coming up, so they had amped up their propositions to work for these people. And during this period, when we were working in this particular region, what we noticed was youth were ready to listen. Youth were actually looking forward for the opportunity that doesn't make them rely on just farming as their particular interest. So one of the guys that we were interacting with, he came us and told that he wanted to understand how the this entire solar to electricity thing works, because probably he would like to be the guy who provides them solar panel in future, or probably he be the guy who provides the next village solar panels, and he can start his own business. He can be the guy. He can be an independent guy. So it kind of motivated him to it gave him the idea that he can be the guy who challenges, or who makes sure that the challenge of solar is handled in this certain region. And others got interested in how the technology worked, and these kind of interests, these kind of ideas, these kind of capacity building can help the youth reach to a potential where they can start their own they can start their own enterprise, they can start their own, and their own small company, and reach out to the people. So
Exactly.
this can also help Senegal government ease the amount of pressure they have to deliver. They can give contracts to these kind of these youth who will take up the who'll say, let's take 4 village around their area, deploy the systems over there, work with the government closely, help the youth who are associated in that particular village in maintenance of the entire system. And so far so good, I would like to report that it has been working fine. I mean, they take care of like we had like I think about a year and a half back, we had a complaint where a battery had some issue, so we arranged a battery to be to be delivered out there. But everything, all the instructions were given on phone. There was a qualified engineer with them who helped them plug the battery, but like a couple of times trying without just a couple of times trying gave them the idea how to do it, and they were like, oh, next time if this comes down, we will handle it ourselves. You won't have to worry about it. So this empowers not only youth, it empowers the entire village, because the electricity is, I personally believe electricity is one of the human basic needs. Yeah. And like having that kind of opportunity where they are able to utilize whatever resource they have. And for me, sun is the biggest resource African nation have. So utilizing the resource they have and moving towards moving towards a cleaner directive can help all these smaller rural villages in Africa become more energy independent and more self-independent.
I agree. No, I definitely agree with you on that, and I think that is sort of very sacrosanct when we talk about the relationship between the industries and how they should be involved in capacity building. Here, I would like to turn back to Utsav, because if Utsav remembers it, I don't know whether he remembers it or not distinctly, but if we sort of date back India Africa Youth Energy Forum's origin, it comes from our joint initiative which we pitched in Fletcher through the capacity building initiative called Sunglow. So what do you think is the missing part of the equation? How can we inculcate this awareness in youth at mass scale? And I'm not saying mass, I mean not 2 billion youth in African continent or 160 million in India, but we should start somewhere. So what should be done, both in terms of the education wise as well as the industry side?
Thank you, Subbu. I think that's a great question. And just to connect what Prasid said about having the industry demand and what Ninad said about government initiatives, I think all of these things need to come together in a strategic way to bring together and empower the youth. And like in India, we have the Jugaad spirit, which means that we can fix anything. In Kenya, there is a Swahili term which is called Jua Kali. Jua Kali means strong sun. And it is basically when all of these young workers, informal workers, they're working under the sun. The meaning and the intention and the spirit is basically to show that given any task, they will figure out a way to do it. So that is the meaning of Jua Kali. So that is a well understood feeling and spirit of overcoming difficulties. Now, this spirit, though it exists, where will it find its expression? Where will it find its interpretation? That is very challenging. And we are all biased towards energy. We are very excited about solar power and energy. However, I think even for people who are not coming from an energy background, don't care about, I think it's very important to understand the role of energy as a foundation in everyday life. Just that you come home and then you switch on your lights, you use water heater for those who are having, you know, all of these things we take for granted. And it's quite possible that going forward after 2020, I was just hearing the IEA's World Energy Investment Report. The grids all over the world, there's been a huge dip in their investment. So many of these things which we take for granted, like grid stability and automatic availability of electricity, we might not be able to. So now more than ever, to come back to your question, Subbu, it's very, very important to have aware and energized youth force involved in these industries. And what I would say, the thing in India and African countries is, while there are a lot of programs, um, especially private companies could be doing a lot more. The problem is a little bit focus on short-term thinking and short-term profits. And for energy, you need to, if you want to make a difference over a lifetime, you need to have a longer planning horizon. You need to think about maybe 50 years, 60 years, and we are all young people. 60 years, we will all be old, but to make a tangible difference in any demographic, any thing, we need to have that vision to see that, to lay a strong foundation today, we'll have 100% power and a strong. I think our goal should be much more ambitious than 100% electricity access. We need an ecosystem where we have empowered youth actively contributing to a vibrant and innovative industry, and an industry which not only serves our own country, which seems to be the focus these days, and of course it's very important, but what China has been able to do is serve the world. What US has been able to do is lead the world in thinking. We have the foundations for that, and we should be thinking about beyond our country, beyond the world. And energy is such a powerful tool that it is quite possible for us to expand our ambitions into space as well. So the industries of the future, which we need to be thinking about today, will be driven by industry, and the industry needs to be more proactive and long term. And as Prasid said, engage the youth in being trained to do innovative things, and innovative not just for the sake of innovating, but bringing those products to market, answering customer demand. And customer demand, so two things I would like to lastly say is, with the COVID problem, the world over, everyone is realizing we cannot go back to the old normal. So there will be a shift to a new normal. And the new normal, which Europe is leading in a big way, is to make transition to green technologies. So whatever foundation you put in now for the next 40, 50 years, it will have to be a low carbon green transition. All those technologies. So initially, while it may be expensive, all those supply chains and ecosystem need to be built in that way. So that is something which industries need to reach out to universities, talk to people, and make sure that they're engaging in hiring people.
You know, I fully agree with you. That should be the case, and we should, sort of be more proactive instead of reactive in our strategy towards clean energy. Now that you have mentioned about universities, I'll want to know what Prasid thinks, because as SECI, they predominantly deal with leading universities across the country. They have access to a large base of young engineers, young graduates who are both passionate as well as interested in trying to do something there. So how can, right from the university level, you can involve them in this fight against climate change and energy transition?
See, there is one line that I think we at IFIF platform only developed. that same question I want to put it again in front of all the panelists. What is the biggest energy you think it is right now? Is it nuclear energy? Is it solar energy? As Ninad has mentioned, sun is the major source in African countries. Is it hydro energy or is it thermal energy? What is that energy? So the answer is this: it is the youth energy. So without youth, without students, without the young generation, you can't do anything, right? And that, and undoubtedly, that database or that connect of youth in India we are having, and with the India Africa Youth Energy Forum, that same connect we can have in African countries as well. Second point is continuing the part what my fellow panelists Utsav and Ninad has mentioned about the energy resources and the research part and other things. Energy resource facilitate the development of income generating activities for the poorest section of the population, especially for women. So the energy source of solar energy source is there, but deploying that energy source, deploying that energy source in the African countries will generate the income for the poorest segment of the society in Africa as well as in India. Uh, I'm sorry. What is the second part of your question?
No. How can you structure the course or structure the dissemination of this capacity building right from a very nascent stage in the college going students, so that they become our messengers? Because
Right.
you can sitting here, we can talk many things, but they are the carriers. They are the ones who one guy can spread it to a lot of people compared to we trying to talk to 1 or 10 or 15 people, and this
Right.
will go on as a movement. So how can we do that?
For that, we have already launched India Africa Youth Energy Forum student chapters, which we are having in SESI as well, SESI student chapters. And in that, one of the basic things that we are taking up is the activities. And that activity is not only we are going there, we are doing something we have shown not to show to public, but that activities is a project focused activities, is focused for the development of student, is focused for the development of that particular region in which a student belongs to, or a student, usually students migrate to different parts of the country. African students are coming to India, Indian students are going to Africa. So they become our energy messenger, they become our energy ambassadors, who take the knowledge from India, goes to their different countries and increase the energy excess. Right now, if you see the data, the sub-Saharan countries, the sub-Saharan African countries is the number one. They lack the energy excess in the world. So if those students are trained here or anywhere in the world, it's not necessarily in India, they're trained anywhere in the world. They go back to their different places in their villages, in the towns where electricity access is not there. They go and develop solar energy, hydro energy, or any part of renewable energy. This is the major thing which I think.
No, I fully agree with you. That is how we have to be more focused on the way we disseminate the technology, disseminate the knowledge. And like you said, everyone can or is potentially an ambassador for not only IAYF, not only energy transition, but for the entire humanity's existence in the coming days. So now, in the same way, Ninad, who takes care of our projects and operations, I would like to now ask him briefly if we can outline how important is to, Utsav spoke about it, even you also spoke about it from your personal experience, that where can we find, that exact spot where we can buy, while we are disseminating this knowledge through capacity building activities, we have to provide a platform for them so that they can apply that. And for that, we of course need industry's support. How can we identify that from your prior experience in Senegal?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because so far I really haven't found that sweet spot yet. But I think we're getting closer every time. Every time we deal with African people, or every time I deal with African projects, or even for that matter, when last time Subbu and I, both of us were at Tanzania and embassy for a program. So even that time during a question answer session, we got a little bit more insight on how we can deal with things where we can actually bring the industry together and the youth together. What I understand, and as of right now, there only exists one major hurdle There are smaller hurdles, but the one major hurdle that I understand and I have come across again and again is industries don't have enormous trust in Africa. For them, they are still living in 1980s Africa, 1990s Africa, where everything is chaotic, nothing is stable, people are still poor, and just like how Western media portrays India as extremely poor, though we have made some huge technological progress, we have made some we recently had startups coming up from India going global, Oyo and Ola being a couple of them. Even after that, the image of India is still a poor country or is a poor nation still persists because a lot of it is projected. To a lot of countries, it is projected in similar way. So if in 2009, I had a chance to visit Germany as a youth exchange in a youth exchange program, and a lot of people believed that we still had cows roaming around everywhere. I said that's somewhat true, but that's somewhat not true. I mean, like there are certain villages where you still so the rural part, yes, you can definitely find, but in urban areas, that's still a very rare sight. It's not as often as you would as often as it is portrayed. I think that is the same perception we have for Africa here in India, especially industry. As when working with Senegal, we had to closely work with both the central government in Senegal, Acer, which is like the rural electrification organization for Senegal, as well as the local government, which helps say panchayat or level, some village level governance as well. And what I understood is they had good bureaucracy, they had a good understanding of their rules, and they were proactively helping you out to ease your discomforts that you were facing.
Yes.
So African countries are extremely capable of dealing with projects, bigger projects, important projects. They have huge funding from African Development Bank. We also have funding from Exim, as Kalyan mentioned, and other banks are also trying to jump into it. So youth is already ready to work. Youth is already ready to put the effort that they need to put for making sure that their work is done. They are able to provide the energy. They are able to provide the support that a company requires while going to a new market. But it is high time that industry understands that Africa, as we know, kind of exists in the past. Yes. The new Africa that is coming up is where the future is going to lie.
True. Yeah. I agree. I fully agree with you. Now, since before we go to the final segment, I want to ask one important question, since you have mentioned this, to Kalyan on the perception part. Because see, I visited Rwanda. Kalyan stays in Rwanda. Anyone who visits the country, their perception of both Africa and Rwanda completely changes. And so when you are dealing with industries, how are you able to convince them about this perception?
Yes, first of all, that's a good question. Before that, I want to tell one thing. As Ninad said, Africa is still living in 1990s, 1980s. At the same time, Ucho has mentioned one point that we can't go back to our old forms. So there is a one point interrelated to this is environment impact. You know that all energy sources have some impact on environment. Fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal, substantially more harmful than renewable energy sources, right? By measures mostly including air pollution, water pollution, land loss, and public health issues, habitat loss, lot of things. So at this time, and one more thing, this pandemic, COVID, has let us know that life is more important than anything else. So now this is the time to change ourselves. Instead of going to thermal or something, we have to implement the solar energy without losing any land or any air pollution or any habitat of people or wildlife. Because right now Africa, we are staying just 2 degrees below the equator, and we are in a land green country, which is 80% dependent on agriculture fields.
Right.
At the same time, and Prashid mentioned one point that to establish a factory or any company, two main things are raw material or natural resources and manpower. Here we are having natural resources, Africa is a land for natural resources.
True.
At the same time, we are having manpower. Everyone is having now basic skills of language and the basic education skills. And one more thing, when it comes to financial and infrastructure, local governments will support with the financial support and infrastructure support.
Hmm.
Yes. And if you compare in India, we have already mastered in solar energy with 34,000 megawatts.
Correct.
Yes. And in India, we are having access of around 94% to electricity in compared to rural and urban. When it comes to Africa, let me explain. Solar power, when it comes to Rwanda, especially in Rwanda, I am staying in Rwanda, which is the second Singapore throughout the world. Now here it is just only 12.23 megawatt of solar energy here. That is 250 kilowatt is installed in 2006, long back, and 8.3 megawatt in 2015 in Rawamagana, which is that 60 kilometers away from Kigali,
Correct.
and NASHO, which is a Howard Buffett Foundation funded project, that is 8.3 megawatt in 2015. In that 8.3, 8 megawatt is completely used for agriculture purpose, water pumping,
Right.
and just 0.3% is just used for the local houses electricity. When it compare, and there is a feasible study in Rwanda showing that in coming future, government is planning for 30 megawatt
Correct.
completely in solar. And in East Africa, with a combined installed PV in East Africa capacity of 199 megawatts, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania represent only 3.9% of solar energy
Hmm.
installed in Africa. Africa is lacking compared to the world and the variation in the continent itself. The current average of access to the electricity in Africa is only 43%, which is only half of the global access rate of 87% of the electricity. Just imagine where they are lagging. As Anand mentioned, 1980s, 1990s, that is a correct point. And yes, there is a lot of need in Rwanda, and not only in Rwanda, in Africa. As we are already mastered in solar energies, we are using solar roofs instead of RCC roofs in India.
Yes.
And we are having a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills. The only thing is we have to transfer the skills to the educated people here and let them know what is the use of solars and what is the benefits. Because instead of using non-conventional, fossil fuels and a lot of things, that is a harm to the environment. By using solar, there are a lot of things in the long run which help the habitat.
Hmm.
Yes,
That is
that
true.
is my point.
No, I agree with you. In fact, to support what you said, in the last 5 years, African countries have seen a tremendous transition to non-conventional sources. Utsav will
Yes,
agree with me. And
yes,
I've been there to Rwanda. It was a joint project where even Utsav was also supposed to be there, but unfortunately couldn't join. But we were able to study the off-grid scenario there. And it is so raw. The market is so virgin, and it's in a very nascent stage. And when things are in nascent stage, two things are to be taken care of very well. One is you don't become a dump yard, and second, you promote more local talent than importing the talent along with materials. So I think
yes,
what you said makes a lot of sense. Africa has begun its transition, and I hope we have to act as both catalysts and as a medium to ensure that this transition will be in a rapid manner. Now, for the last part of the segment, I would like to ask each one of you one thing and describe it with two objectives, not to sound like Karan Johar's rapid fire round, but so that it will give us a good perception of this thing. So I'll start with Utsav. So what comes to your mind when I say youth and energy? Two adjectives for that.
These days, it seems all youth are out of energy because we are sitting at home thanks to lockdown. But what comes to mind is very, very forward-looking, development-oriented, active image where people are working together and using technology to do much more things than just watch Netflix.
Excellent. So you're
um, that's what
so
we do.
instead of Netflix and chill, it is Netflix and cool the planet. So now to Ninad. So what
Yeah.
comes to your mind when we talk about climate change activism?
So for me, climate change activism comes in two parts. We first of all we focus on what our main agenda has always been as IYEF, that first clean energy, second green energy. So when I say green energy, I don't particularly just mean solar or any energy that has negative impact on negative impact on pollution. But green energy in sense more amount of heat, because no matter what we do, if we need to reduce the carbon emissions, we are going to need more trees. We can go all green, we can go 100% green, but if there is nobody to soak up that extra amount of carbon that we had been generating for
Yes.
decades together, there is not going to be any impact. So like other than youth, the green energy, or the energy was provided by trees, or the support provided by trees are going to be more critical. And crucially, I personally think in terms of impact, I think this is going to be a game changer. Like I recently saw a lot of countries are considering that as the demand for energy fell in most of the countries, they understood that the problem with coal or any fossil fuel is they cannot regulate it as well as they would like to have.
Yes.
With probably with solar, mostly 101% with solar, 101% with wind, 101% with hydro. They can do that. We can shut down a couple of panels. We can shut down a segment. We can lower the speed of the water that has been thrown into the turbine for the turbine. We can shut down a couple of windmills. So we can adjust to the demand that populace is providing.
Yes.
So I think moving forward, that is going to be critical. Moving forward, that is how our approach is going to be, and I hope this becomes a new normal where a country that previously went, like I'm talking about the United States of America, who previously went more coal after the 45th president came into power, is also considering that maybe that's not the right way to go around, and maybe solar is the second way. So hopefully that we will see a day where at least 70% of the entire world's energy is generated on solar.
Yeah. So I was about to tell only. So Utsav's answer was Netflix and cool the climate. Yours is clean energy but not coal. So don't clean the coal but clean energy.
Yeah.
So,
that would be my approach.
Paraphrasing the president that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And to Kalyan, what comes to your mind when I talk about industry academia connect?
Come again?
The link between the industry and academia.
Academic year.
Universities, yeah.
This academic year.
No. What comes to your mind when I talk about the collaboration between industry and universities?
Universities. Nothing here, because I was studying in South India. Typical South Indian. For me, just enjoy the university life. Now, when we come out of the university, the real life will start. And how passionate we are on the things. I mean, when it comes to energy, you are from energy background.
Yes.
So you are passionate about energies. I am from mechanical background, but still I am passionate in energy now.
In fact, what you said is a grim reality of the country today. And when I asked you the question, you said nothing. And that is the answer. That is the actual answer.
That is the answer.
There is no connect
I would
between...
actually agree with...
Yeah, there is no connect.
Something...
No, there is no connect between industry and academia at all. And I often joke that industry is like a boyfriend who stands on the 14th floor of the building, and academia is the girl standing at the lobby of the entrance of the building just to get into the floor. Now, both of them don't know what they're thinking, and either one of them should climb up or climb down to understand what they want to do with each other. Break up or make up, whatever they want to do, the communication channel should be established. And unless and until that is there, there's nothing. The guy will stand on top, there will be on down, and they will do. So industry thinks academia doesn't do anything of our interest. Academia thinks the industry is fit for nothing to our standards of research. So that is very, very well answered.
I think one word will fit that one. Misunderstanding. One word will fill that one. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding.
That is very good word. Now,
yes.
Prasid, you can unmute your mic. And to Prasid, one last question is...
just a second, I just want to answer your question for this Industry Academia Connect. There is one word for this answer, that is India Africa Youth Energy Forum, which is providing that platform. And secondly, this IAYF can become the Tinder to connect these girls and boys which are not able to meet right now.
That is a good one.
So,
That's a good one.
very good one.
In
I
interest
think
of
I'm going to.
diversity, we also promise that in the future we will have both women and also Africans on the ground who are
Yes.
involved in the energy sector, so that we can get their diverse perspectives as well.
No, in fact, today in our call, we were supposed to be joined with our African colleagues, but due to the time constraint and all, we were not able to join. But the next episode, we will be having them on the panel, and so that I can have a more concentrated discussion about things that are specific to Africa and dwell into nitty gritty. Now, last question to Prasid on.
Sorry. Just
Sir.
before, I'd also like to add one industry university connect. I visited a small energy company here in Kenya, and they build the telecom towers for Safaricom, which is one of the largest telecom companies in Kenya. So, an interesting thing which I noticed on their headquarters is that they have a on-site tower in which they use to train their own youth people. So basically, within their headquarters, they're having a practice site, a build site, where people can learn how to set it up, what are the frequencies, what are the energy challenges, all of that. And I'm happy to report that they've helped their client convert many sites to solar from diesel. So that has cut down the diesel cost, that has cut down. So even a lot of and they receive trainees from the local universities, from both prominent and many of their colleague trainees and employees have gone on to work for Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, all these big well-known companies.
So
So
that's
there are
very good.
very good companies doing a lot of things very well, which are still relatively unknown. And if we can scale these things, then that will lay a good foundation.
I agree. I fully agree. Now, one final last question to Prasid, which is very most relevant to both Africa, India, and most importantly, India Africa Youth Energy Forum. Capacity building.
The population. See, by 2024, India will be the most populous country in the world. And if I'm not wrong, by 2040, the maximum number of youth will be in Africa. So capacity building is more required for youth. And if the population is a major chunk of youth population is in India and Africa, then that is the only factor that is playing role.
Yes. So that's a very good answer. So thank you everyone for sharing your views.
And another
We-
point to be noted, as mentioned by Prasid, even in the youth of Africa, few are coming to India to learn something.
Correct.
Yes.
So I fully agree that this should be an unending process where we facilitate or we act as a bridge to put in raw terms in Prasid's language, act as a Tinder to connect both parties, to connect enthusiasts on both sides of the Indian Ocean, and also to establish a meaningful discourse so that more and more youth can come and join this fight against climate change, the resolve for energy transition, as well as emphasizing the need for clean energy. So thank you, Utsav, thank you, Prasid, thank you, Ninad, thank you, Kalyan, for accepting my request. And it's very happy to see. I remember I'm feeling nostalgic and feeling both happy and sad at the same time that we have completed 2 years. And though it is unfortunate we don't have a we can't meet in person, but it's still good to be connected. And like they say in the Avengers movie, that all of them assemble when things are very important. And I think we have assembled at the right juncture where the entire world is at the verge of a paradigm shift from what we were and what we should be. And I hope all of us, both in our individual capacities and in India Africa Youth Energy Forum, try to contribute and make sure that all of our dreams and all of the dreams of 2 billion youth in both Indian subcontinent, African continent come. Thank you.